Hello, everybody. It's Book of Katherine, and we are back for Sermon on the Mount Explained, Part 8, finally heading into the third chapter, Matthew chapter 7, in the Message translation. Let's head on over there now. So here we are, chapter 7. Quote, as Jesus is speaking, quote, "Don't pick on people, jump on their failures, criticize their faults, unless, of course, you want the same treatment. That critical spirit has a way of boomeranging." And this is a very, very important lesson. I don't know if I really need to explain it, but if you hang around, it just like attracts like. That's one of the most important things I ever learned, was that like attracts like. You can't change another person. You can't ever make them. People stick around others. If you've been raised in an abusive household, quite often you'll stay around people in order to change them. You think that you can change them, especially your families. You think that you can make out the best of them, or you think peace will never last unless you're there. And he's saying, nope, don't participate in it. And he's also saying a critical spirit of picking on people, jumping on their failures, criticizing their faults. He's saying that will only earn you the same treatment back. You'll be surprised at how it comes back. Sometimes you think that you're helping and you're not actually helping. They'll translate that as actually being critical of them, and then they'll snipe right back at you. And go ahead and pay attention to that. If you know snarky people, the opposite of what he says, when you walk through life, if you're wide-eyed and open and joyful and generous, the opposite of that is highly critical people. That there's a difference between that critical spirit that he's talking about, right? When it says jumping on the failures, criticizing their faults, a lot, this is like the typical dad that people complain about, is that, oh, he never loved me, or, oh, he's always highly critical, and oh, he's always negative. This is that kind of person that, again, is a no face versus a yes face. If you, sometimes I'll walk into a store, and if the people that are working the store just have these no face, they just have that look on their faces that they are just in a bad mood. They just bitch all day and they bitch all night. And that's just who they are. They're bitchy. And then I'm like, I don't even bother shopping the store. I leave. Well, I used to, but I'm like, I'm trying to think of the last time I've been in the store. But I'm just saying, I traveled quite a bit before, and I just got tired of it. Part of it probably is that as more and more I got sick and dealt with pain, I had less and less patience for it. And if a store was open, and if the store owner was open and wonderful, for example, that Mermaid's Chest, I doubt it's open anymore, but it was in Santa Barbara, and it was something that we found on one of our road trips. And the owner was the exact opposite of a critical spirit. She was open to everything, which is why her store was the way that it was. It was just all these vintage items of all these things that her and her husband picked up in a variety of places, either buying online on eBay or buying at garage sales around. And because of their spirit, they had such an amazing eye. Everything in the store was something I could study for hours and hours. And I liked being around someone like that. I really enjoyed that. And over time, I learned, especially through the book Boundaries, I learned to kind of change the people that I was around. The more and more that helped me get more and more healthy. And eventually, I ended up with people that are similar to me, maybe very different, but they definitely don't have that critical spirit and jumping on everybody. Boy, do they have different opinions, and maybe opinions that don't. We all have so many different personalities, but the difference is that we don't expect anyone to exactly align with us. Does that make sense? Anyway, so you guys know what I mean about people who are being very, very critical. He says the critical spirit, it has a way of boomeranging. And if you don't want to be around a critical spirit, you need to make the hard choices and you need to leave. Don't hang around with people like that. And he's also saying, don't be that way. Don't be that way where you're hyper judgmental. That is one of the biggest traps, in my opinion, of the online world, is that if when, at least when I rotate through my my feed, it feels like everything is this trap. Everyone has a critical spirit. They have this critical people on the right and then critical people on the left. And that's all they do. They just flip through videos all day and just criticize it and they don't ever leave anything, but they're paid. These people are paid so much money on both the right and the left. And it's a great distraction. There's a reason that they do it, is that it's a great distraction from what actually matters and what actually is going on. You can really get trapped into that of just this really awful, you'd be surprised at how contagious it can be and how it can really get into you and how you can very easily mirror it. And it's just not a healthy, it's just, you want to think about the school bully. Yeah, there is a lot more than just the school bully that are like that. That's a lot more than just the critical. Think about the teachers that you've had, the people that you've run in, or the professors that you've had. How many of them were approachable? How many of them were somebody that you actually felt like talking to? And then how many were just bitter at the world? That's how I think of it, is bitterness, is that there are just some people who are bitter. And I'd rather be around people who are grateful. To me, the big defining characteristic are people grateful? Do they walk around with a spirit that says, I'm grateful for the things that I have, the sky that's blue, the good weather, the world that is around us and the world that I'm in and the gifts that I've been given? Am I grateful? Do I have an attitude of gratitude? Oh God, is that a phrase? An attitude of gratitude? Oh, I'm so sorry. That came out accidentally. But like I said before, they've done analyses, and they said that if you have gratitude and choose gratitude, it releases a chemical in your brain that protects you from disease and harm. That's part of the natural law in there. If you have a spirit that's critical and that's bitter and that's just bitter about life and a victim spirit, if you're in this position of always being a victim, then you end up you'll never be victorious. You'll never feel like you'll never feel gratitude. And he's saying, don't do that, because if you have this horrible bitterness, then you're going to get around people who are also bitter, and your life will be miserable, and so will the people around you. And those people who are grateful, we have this pattern in society, especially when addictions are so high, and it can be addictions to any sort of thing that's deadly, whether it's alcohol, whether it's methamphetamine, any kind of addiction. There's usually this pattern that happens. Don't talk to me about coffee addiction, though that is deadly. That's why miscarriages happen, because of caffeine. There's the reason the depopulation, Agenda 21, when the depopulation came, socialism, the agenda for depopulation came out, the Ted Turner out in UN 21, the Gaia, the whole let's depopulate the earth to save the planet. When that came out, the same year was when they released Starbucks. They monopolized Starbucks, and it grew like 70 times the size. It went from just a few Starbucks coffee stores, and then in just one summer, the summer they did UN 21 and ratified it, it just went across the world. And there's a reason for that. Like caffeine, miscarriages have skyrocketed since then. And the United States is now number one in maternal deaths, for a developed country. So, and the reason is that we drink caffeine like crazy, more than we ever used to before. And if we don't have it in the morning, we start getting the shakes. We're so addicted to coffee and to sodas, to all these kind of chemicals that create abortion. Hell, even they teach our kids in school that abortion is a form of birth control. They don't tell the kids in school that one abortion means the mother's chance of dying and the mother's chance of miscarriage on the next birth that she wants or is going to have. The maternal death rate goes up 50%. And then it becomes like 100% and then 200%. With every abortion, her chance of dying during the birth of a baby or even being pregnant just goes up 50%, then the second one 100%, then the next one 200%. And what happens is that then the doctor says, okay, your life is in jeopardy and we're going to have to do another abortion, which then increases the mother's chance of death even more. And so there's just all these things out there. Anyway, so going back to the critical spirit, just be very careful about how you approach life. If you are a negative person, if you're just and negative is not the same thing as being kind. There's kindness that's done to manipulate. There's definitely kindness that's done to manipulate. So just because we have so many addictive systems, what that does is that negative people search out positive people to utilize and brutalize. They know that these people are nice and kind and gracious and generous, and they look for generous people because they've driven everybody else out of their life. And then they just suck those people dry. And they do it. Boyfriends will do that to girlfriends. If you really pay attention, guys who are really, really deadly, it's not like they go around looking for another girl who's super deadly. They usually go take the good girl who's super generous and nice to everybody, and then isolate her and then drain her and then turn her either into the bad girl or kill her. So it's just more deadly than you think to stick around negativity. And he's saying, don't have a critical spirit. That has a way of boomeranging. And a lot of that is because he's speaking to Judea and Jerusalem. And that was one of the things that the records show, is that there was this deep-seated, bitterness or critical spirit that just ran through, so that everyone in Judea had a knife under their cloak. They all had knives ready to just stab. So they say the first terrorists were the Jews of Sicily or something like that, or they moved the Sicario. That's where it comes from, is from the first gang of guerrilla terrorists. And there's a whole Wikipedia page on it that there's, they don't even have one for Dr. Judy Wood, but they have one for terrorism. Very interesting. So, and he's saying he's telling this crowd to turn the other cheek. He's saying you're going to have to knock off the critical spirit, or else you'll get the same thing. It's karma. He's telling them about the natural law. If you live this way, that's what you will get back. Right? So, next, he says, quote, "It's easy to see a smudge on your neighbor's face and be oblivious to the ugly smear on... It's easy to see a smudge on your neighbor's face and be oblivious to the ugly sneer on your own. Do you have the nerve to say, 'Let me wash your face for you,' when your own face is distorted by contempt?" It's this whole traveling roadshow mentality all over again, playing a holier-than-thou part instead of just living your part. Okay, how often do we have traveling roadshow people? You could probably make a whole list of them. Documentaries are made of them, of people who go up there in white suits or in big orange caravans, and they go out there and they say, "Oh, we get a plane seat because we're a holy monk and we deserve to be treated as better than you." And then, "Oh, we're going to bless you," or "Oh, we're going to pray for you," or "Oh, don't touch me or else I'll slap you. How dare you touch the cloth of mine?" He's like, no, you're supposed to be paying attention to your side of the street and just doing your part. Do not say you're holier than the other person. Do not sit there and judge anybody. You are not to sit and judge anyone. He says, wipe that ugly sneer off your own face, and you might be fit to offer a washcloth to your neighbor. So he said, that's a pretty resounding slap, isn't it? To people who were so diseased and dirty and scrawny out of their desire to be holy. They had so many rituals that there was a running joke in Rome that the high priest had water, but he ended up dying of thirst because he was using all of the water for all the rituals that the Mishnah had outlined. That means it wasn't prophets who wrote the Mishnahs. Like, if you look into the Jewish libraries, like a lot of the, if you try to order the Tanakh or the Torah, you'll find that they come in these massive books. And when you open up the books, then you find that the actual prophets in the Torah, like say what Moses wrote, the 10 Commandments, you'll find them written down in the corner in very small print. Let me try and drink some water. I'm sorry about my throat. Hold on. Oh, well, this is the best I can do for you. I'm so sorry. He's basically saying that, you have all this pride and all these extra things that you've heaped onto the law of Moses. The Lord already gave them an enormous book of laws because he knew the way that his people, these 12 tribes of Israel were. I mean, look at the forefathers, the 12 the 12 the 12 sons of Jacob, if you look into that story, Joseph, they try to kill their brother Joseph. Joseph he had the gift of visions and he could see the future. And what did they say? They were bitter and they were jealous, and so they try to kill him. And then one of their sons was like, don't kill him, we'll end up getting in trouble. Throw him down in this cistern, let him go ahead and die. And so they threw him down in this thing in the middle of the desert. And then they saw, the Lord sent some Ishmaelites by, and they're like, oh, we could actually make money off of him. So they're like, okay, we won't kill him, we'll just make money off of him. Like, that's the actual 12 sons of Jacob, the whole 12 tribes of Israel that say that they're the chosen. No, the chosen bloodline to come for the Messiah to come through. But you can see that this kind of like, oh, we'll kill our own brother that's what Jesus is trying to speak against, is saying, let's not live with war with one another, and saying, what is the best price I can get for this? And let me go for the lowest deal. Let me get the best deal. He's saying to live your life generously and not with this wheel and deal kind of thing of like, oh, I need to get the best thing. And, oh, I need to tip the absolute least, or, oh, I need to not tip. No. Like, don't just leave a tip, leave a generous tip. Like, live generously. And he's saying no one's holier than another person. Think of all of these all across all religions, and even these cult leaders. We have so many of them today, and they go and they sit on the stage over everybody. And the moment you do that, there's such a big problem with that. There's a reason that churches used to be small, where they were inside the homes. Jesus didn't sit there and have a church or a congregation. He barely ever came out, and people were constantly searching for him. He didn't meet anywhere except for outside, and he didn't let people follow him around all the time. He chose 12 that could be his apostles. They were going to spread the word across the earth, but he didn't do this. Even he didn't say constantly correct them and say who he was, if that makes sense. So he sat amongst them. He didn't ever sit up on a stage. That's something very important to understand, that even the Son of God did not sit up on a stage. And he of all who deserved that, the only time he became higher than everybody else is when they crucified him. And then when he ascended and defeated death. So, you want to live, like your master, then don't be getting up on pulpits. Don't get up in these fancy robes. Don't let people kiss your hand. Have you ever seen these rituals at the Catholic, if you go in Rome, and the way the nuns bow down and grasp the hand of what they call the Holy Father and kiss his hand? Like, that ain't the Holy Father. That's just another guy. That's just another guy wheeling and dealing in politics with the world and ruling the world with bitterness and you saw what happened when a Chinese woman came to cling to him to ask for healing. He whacked her hand. And you know how much power Rome has when the entire world, in the middle of the Me Too movement, actually, a man who literally is the patriarchy, except Rome is never, everyone says, fuck the patriarchy. And yet they never spell out Rome. The men with the most power in the world never ever meant anyway. So those guys are just guys. Take off their yarmulkes, take off their robes, take down the white pillars, dunk them in the water, knock them off the side of a boat, and you pick them up and they look like a little drowned rat like the rest of us. There's nothing to them. They're short and they have sneers on their face, and same with mafiosos, but they're just people. And he's saying, until you do that, until you actually wipe that sneer off your face that you have for other people or for the world or for racism, whatever it is that you think makes you better than another person, he says, until you adjust yourself, then don't try to wreck anybody else's parade. All right. Quote, don't be flip with we're at verse 6. Quote, don't be flip with the sacred. Banter and silliness give no honor to God. Okay, banter and silliness. That again reminds me of the debates that we see online or we see in classrooms. These big universities have these debates, which is ridiculous. They go back and forth, and they try to one-up each other. There's entire, courses on apologetics. What the hell? Apologetics? Jesus never taught people how to argue with anyone. Why don't you watch how Jesus actually handled those who wanted to argue with him? He didn't even talk to them till the very end. They came up to him. They tried to start an argument with him. Every time they try to start an argument with him, and he would have a one sentence answer, usually very short, and then he'd walk away. He'd walk away because if you truly are backed by the Father, then you don't need anyone. Like, you literally don't need to go to war. Like, let the Lord do the fighting for you. You know, that's that phrase, that verse from the Old Testament, be still and know that I'm God, from the prophets, be still and know that I am God. It's not up to you to fight the Lord's battles. You have plenty to deal with on your plate today. You know, stop worrying about everybody else. Stop thinking that he's given everybody else to you like a flock. So many people stick with evil people or evil families. They stick in horrible conditions because they think, well, this is what the Lord's given me. And that's not at all. That's because they're following Paul, the false apostle that Jesus calls out in the book of Revelations. And no, go to the Gospels, read what Jesus actually says and how he actually lives. And the moment he is rejected, he walks away, and he tells the apostles, hey, if a town rejects you, just shake the dirt off your shoes and walk away. Like, take nothing with that town and leave them. Trust me when I tell you that's a curse upon them. Trust me, but let the Lord do the cursing. It's not up to you. So, and banter and silliness, just don't, all of these apologetics and all of these debates and all of these getting in tangles and saying, oh, this is right and this is wrong and going against this politics and that politics. You're only fanning a flame and giving those who you think are doing something wrong, you're only giving them a greater platform. That's all you're doing. It's not generous to go out there and bitch and argue all the time. Like, you're just giving... This is the same thing I tell people about haters. If you have haters on your channel, if you have a channel or you have a platform, if you have a social media platform and you have haters, do you understand what you're doing when you say what they are saying? Do you understand? Like, you have this huge audience because we live on social media way more than you actually know about. You have this huge audience. A bunch of people are watching. If they're happy with you, they don't say anything. If they're really happy with you, they say something. And then if they're bitchy, they leave some awful comment. And then what do? Of all the comments, you make your next post all about the one negative comment. Like, get over it. Get over yourself. You're not that important. Let the Lord deal with the people who are that bitchy and who want to banter back and forth. And don't be silly. Like, don't be silly when it comes to the Lord. Like, I see people doing these TikToks where they sit on it and they say, I love you. And they sing on their TikTok, I love Jesus. Yes, I do. I love Jesus. It's so, I don't know what they do. They think the angels are sitting there going, yay. That kind of video. Anyway, do your thing with the Lord. You don't need to go. All you do when you do that, understand that when you do something like that, you are literally calling attention from the wolves to come and get you. I cannot tell you what a risk that is when you do that. If you think that that's convincing something to walk with the Father, no, that's between you and the Father and that joy. And if you give it off, that's not being gracious with it. When you sit there and go, I love Jesus, I love Jesus, and Satan's come for me, but I'm conquering. It's just, why don't you ask the Lord what he thinks of that? Why don't you find out what he actually thinks of that? Of lip syncing to a fastly paced praise and worship song, because Jesus has already said what he thinks about rote prayers. You know, we don't sing any songs to our friends that way. They're over and over. I do to my cats. I have some memorized songs that I sing to my cats. So if that tells you anything. So, all right. So, quote, don't reduce holy mysteries to slogans. And that's why I didn't like saying, attitude of gratitude. Like, that's not a good idea. That's what the heathens do. He says, quote, don't reduce holy mysteries to slogans. In trying to be relevant, you're only being cute and inviting sacrilege. Hey, It's like, you knew I was going to talk about the TikTokers sitting there singing. You're trying to be relevant. You're trying to be on TikTok. You're trying to put it out. Nope, you're only being cute and inviting sacrilege. That's exactly right. That's here Jesus is telling you specifically, he suffered and died defeated death to get to you and to offer you all this joy and all this, the ability to be in the presence of the Lord. And instead of doing what Jesus actually says, which is going off on your own and talking with him, like, I can't imagine sitting there on TikTok and talking to the Father. I can't imagine doing that at all. I talk to the Father and I talk to him about what he wants. Like I've told you, this is what he asked me to do. He asked me to do the Sermon on the Mount and do the explained, which is why, like, there's 8 other things I want to talk about today. This is specifically what he asked me to do. And I am trying to do that to the best of my ability and to the best of my health. So that's like the most I would, the closest you'll ever see me get to sitting. I can't imagine like letting people in and filming my actual talking to the Lord. I'd be too distracted. I'd be too distracted by the camera to actually focus. It takes some bit of focus to talk to the Father. Plus, I mean, it's God. Trust me, when you're in the presence of the glory, it's really hard to pay attention to anything else. So that's what he's saying. If you think that you're trying to be relevant, you're only being cute and inviting sacrilege. That means the angels are not going to be impressed, and it just might have, the natural law just might go against you. So think twice about that. Okay, quote, verse 7. Don't bargain with God. Oh, I did that once and I regret it. I wish I hadn't. I should have talked. Don't bargain with God. Be direct. Ask for what you need. This isn't a cat and mouse hide and seek game we're in. Yeah. I was still involved in church. My husband and I were still attending a church at this time. And I remember what it was like back then before we were just talking directly to God and seeking his voice only instead of going to a church. And when you're in a church setting, any kind of temple setting, there's this kind of like, oh, am I doing things right? Am I doing things wrong? You don't really know what's right and what's wrong. And you kind of do a lot of it by feeling, and you do a lot of it by how your friends take it or how your pastors take it. And you ask everyone for advice. You do everything but asking him. And it's very hard to hear him because you've allowed all these other people in your life that are supposedly experts. You've allowed yourself to, be involved with all this banter instead of only the Father and the Holy Spirit and investing in that. And, we said once, we were like, well, we don't know where you want us to go. So, provide this by this point and we'll know which way to go. And that ended up with the worst place I've ever been. It was absolutely horrible. Absolutely horrible. Is possibly, with the exception of my family and where I grew up, once I left my family, that was possibly the worst place. I would say in some ways, oh, I can't even describe it. It was so bad. It was so bad. I regret every minute that I was there. And I learned a lot, for sure. It makes you seek the Father. But I remember it was so dark there that I had a hard time hearing his voice. I was like, where I didn't feel him there. He wasn't as strong there. Oh, it was so awful. And I remember reading this and being like, that was him. That's exactly what we did right then. And thankfully we haven't done it any other time, but we did that once and it didn't turn out well. And Jesus actually uses this. We just talked about this when I just did a piece on when Jesus was tempted. Satan says, why don't you throw yourself off a cliff and the angels will catch you? The Lord says he'll make sure that you won't even so much as stub your toe, which I totally understand now. But Jesus was like, don't bargain with God. Don't test the Lord your God. He's right. Don't be like, oh, look what my God can do and he'll just catch me. No, you're testing him. What he's saying is, if you walk with me, I'll never let you falter. He does give us life. And I've certainly seen that. I've seen that play out oh my goodness, I can't tell you the number of his ways, but it's more about trusting him and letting him be your good shepherd. And he'll never lead you to a pasture that is awful. Like it has been, I've watched all these storms pass all these places And all these families that either my husband and I left behind or that my friends left behind. And then we look at our own and we're like, yeah, there's still a time of testing, but it could have been so much worse. He shelters us from so much, or he gives us a heads up so that we're prepared. And so, or honestly, with the COVID and everything, he had us do certain things, and I thought that they were crazy at the time. I thought they were absolutely crazy, but I was like, okay, I learned by then to just follow. And then COVID hit, and if I hadn't done any of those things, I don't know if I would have made it through COVID. My health would have been so much worse had we not done that. The house was ready, everything was ready. It was, even my husband already had an in-home office by then, so that we were able to absorb the whole like coming home and the whole furlough, the thing that happened to so many people. That for my health, I needed it in a certain way so that I didn't go into major episodes. And he had set us all up. I mean, he didn't tell us why, which is why I don't know, he's just saying, don't test him. Tell him what you want. Ask for what you need. It's not a cat and mouse hide and seek game. He's saying, if you feel that way, like you don't know what the Lord's saying and you can't hear him, and then you're not around the right things, you need to get to another place and you need to be quiet until you do. And you need to stop turning to other people and being like, does this sound like him? No, you just talk to the Lord directly. You talk to him. It's between you and him. Okay? So, quote, if your child asks for bread, do you trick him with sawdust? If he asks for fish, do you scare him with a live snake on his plate? Well, we're at the end, so you see that all the time on TikTok. That's how bad things are. He says, as bad as you are, you wouldn't think of such a thing. You're at least decent to your own children. So don't you think God, who conceived you in love, will be even better? Quote, here's a simple rule of thumb guide for behavior. Ask yourself what you want people to do for you, then grab the initiative and do it for them. Add up God's law and the prophets, and this is what you get. And this is where the phrase, do unto others as you would have done to yourself. And Rabbi Zakkai, not even just Zakkai at the time, this guy in training at the temple under Hillel, the only one that survived of all the Pharisees who went up to Tel Aviv, now the richest city in the world, he went up there and Zakkai rewrote everything. And in it, he wrote the history of Hillel, who came from Babylon. Do you really think about it? And he says, if you go and look up Rabbi Hillel or Hillel the Elder on Google, what it'll take you is to a Wikipedia page where it attests almost everything Jesus ever said. And it says, oh, it was Hillel that said that. And it makes you feel like you've been Jewish your whole life. You're like, what in the world? But no, it came from Jesus. He's the one that said it. What we know that if you keep on reading about Hillel the Elder, what you learn is that, number one, he was the Nazi, Nasi, the Nazi, which is the head of the Sanhedrin, and that Hillel the Elder actually removed from the Jubilees, the law of Jubilees. He changed the law of Moses. That's in Exodus and in Deuteronomy. And he changed the law of Moses, which said that your debts will be forgiven every 7 years. And that's a major part. The Lord said, I forgive you, and therefore you should forgive each other. So forgive the debts. And that's because that the Messiah was coming. It was to remind them that the Messiah was coming and that the Messiah had come. Was this idea of whatever debts you're in, the Lord buys you out of debts, and whatever homes you have, that land is actually the Lord's. And instead, Hillel the Elder removes that. Does that sound like a guy that's like, do unto others as you would have done to yourself? Really? Really? Because he, the guy who's like, well, we're just going to make sure that bank loans go on forever. We're going to keep all of these other laws, but the law of Moses has. But when it comes to forgiveness, we're going to end that policy in Judea. I mean, no wonder people had a spirit of criticism. They hadn't been forgiven. None of their debts had been forgiven. None of their slaves have been set free. Like every 7 years, anyone who was in captivity, who had been sold into slavery, because it's servanthood. Like, if you read into what slavery was, it was someone who was like an indentured service. They said, oh, will you take me on here so that my family has this, and then I'll work for you? And Lord was like, you can do that as much as you want, but either you set them free or you give them a corner of their field so that they have a little bit of land, so that whatever they sow there is also theirs. And so they have a choice of either being set free. But if you like working for this one master, these servants had an option of staying, and then they just get their own piece of land. It's a very healthy system of working, because people do it today all the time. The kind of system that's in Jubilees, people do it all the time, all over the world. There's crazy things that go all over the world. But the point is that under the Lord's Jubilees, you had to let them go. Like, everyone was to return to their homeland. So anyone who agreed to be an indentured servant, they knew, like, oh, well, I either have 7 years at most before I get to go home. Like, I can stay in service, but no one can stay in service longer than 7 years or 6 years, because they'd have to be let go for the 7th year. So no one worked longer than 6 years. Doesn't that sound about right? Like, isn't that about the average time that people stay in a job as it is? So the Lord had this natural law built in, and Hillel did away with all of it. He was like, no, your debts can't be forgiven for bank loans, and your debts can't be forgiven for slavery. You just have to stay until it's worked off. And that's like what people blame the banking system about today, is that there is no such thing as loan forgiveness. That's from Hillel the Elder. So things like this, when he says, if you want people to do something for you, when Jesus says, ask yourself what you want people to do for you, then grab the initiative and do it for them. That's what Jesus said. You find in the Sanhedrin, the Yoma, you'll find that a lot of the prophecies that Jesus made, you'll find Zacchaeus stealing them and saying them. And so he went ahead and accused Jesus and had him killed, and saw him rose again. But then he went and used all the prophecies to move his power up in the actual Sanhedrin, like saying, oh, I know, temple, you're about to be destroyed. I know it, and he saw enough of what Jesus said coming to pass. He knew it. There's a big difference between not knowing someone's the Messiah and knowing someone's the Messiah. Like, Zacchaeus continually demonstrated that he knew that Jesus was the Messiah. He was assigned to him. He was from Galilee. He knew, and he still chose otherwise. Like, for example, the reason he got out of Israel, it doesn't make any sense that he was the only Pharisee to free Jerusalem. Why would he do that? Unless he knew that Jerusalem was going to be destroyed, just like Jesus said he would. He rose again exactly like he said he would, and Zacchaeus started saying things to the temple. And then when the time came, Jesus said, when this place is surrounded, when Jerusalem is surrounded on all 4 sides, flee for the hills. And that's exactly what Zacchaeus does. Like, the deception is incredible. But if you don't know anything about it, that's different. So the Lord does count whether or not you know it. So anyway, so ask yourself what you want people to do for you, then grab the initiative and do it for them. And by the way, the places that this is taught, like, this is a deep part of, it was a deep part of the United States culture. And other cultures make fun of the United States for this, of do unto others as you would have them done. It's very interesting to me that they're ridiculed that much for it. It's very fascinating. They see that thing as a weakness, but that's why he says that weakness will inherit the earth. And that's the new earth is going to go to those who actually, live generously, not necessarily know Jesus or walk with Jesus, but there are definitely people all around the world, whatever religion you are, that already live like this. They know the truth and they obey the truth. And those are the people who are being called to the new Jerusalem and to the new Israel. It's time to go to the new earth, right? Okay, so it has nothing to do with being of those 12 tribes at all. And that's why the text of everything else, of all the other histories, the text of Adam and Eve's history, the text of the people before Noah's, the books of remembrance, the other prophets, the prophet Aki and Haggai and Enoch, those are all kept because the focus is supposed to be on Israel and these 12 tribes, but that was one covenant for the Messiah, and that's it. And there's so many other stories of the Lord's people, like so many, and you'll find yourself in them. So, all right, verse 13, quote, Don't look for shortcuts to God. The market is flooded with surefire, easygoing formulas for a successful life that can be practiced in your spare time. Don't fall for that stuff, even though crowds of people do. The way to life, to God, is vigorous and requires total attention. I believe I just spoke to that. So I think you guys, that's very clear. I don't think that needs any translating. Verse 15, quote, "Be wary of false preachers who smile a lot." Oh, no kidding. This is universal. Universal. Be wary of false preachers who smile a lot, dripping with practiced sincerity. Chances are they are out to rip you off some way or another. Don't be oppressed with charisma. Look for character. Who preachers are is the main thing, not what they say. By the way, this is how crypto and NFT influencers and journalists and podcasters, this is exactly how 300 million people lost $25 trillion all over the world, is because of people who smile a lot, dripping with practice sincerity, the people who are very good at charm. That's why that one book, I used to recommend it before. It's by the FBI guy. Let me look it up. Hold on. It's called The Gift of Fear. So The Gift of Fear is this amazing book that was written by a former FBI agent who would train people on how to listen to that instinct within themselves that says to go. This gift of fear that tells you it's time to go, and it saves your life. So in that book, the most important lesson that I learned from it was charm. He said, charm is not a quality or characteristic. It is a verb. Charm is what people do to others to get things from them. So if someone's charming, and you see it on TikTok all the time, you see it on OnlyFans all the time, you see it on Instagram all the time, you see it on every single platform in every single religion, you see people who are charming, which means they are charming you to get something out of you, to get what they want, to get something from you. Charm is done. That's why car salesmen, lawyers, they're charming. That's what they use as a veneer to cover up the shrewdness, ugliness, sneer on their face. It's a mask. And he's saying, don't fall for the mask. Don't fall for charm. So when someone's charming, I always recognize that. And today I've gotten to the point where I can just smile back, but I don't trust them a bit, and I don't give them a bit. Like, the decision's made as soon as I see that the charm has been turned on, because there are people who seem like they're doing great things for charity work online and on YouTube, but they're charming, and I can see that. You can see the charm. You learn the smile. You learn the little smile, the little smirk that they give. And that's like a snake, like a snake charmer, getting the snake to do what they want. It is something being done to fool you. It is what the deceiver does. The deceiver doesn't show up in a big black coat and say, I'm the deceiver, ever. It's always a wolf in sheep's clothing. The deceiver will show up like a sheep that goes, bah, oh, aren't I cute? Bat my eyelashes, right? Or, oh, look, I just happen to show a little bit of shoulder. Or, oh, I need so much instruction. Won't you help me? I'm so innocent. Won't you send donations and just help me? Because I'm so lost in this world. And it's like, no, that because you're charming, you know what you're doing. It's an actual action that you're doing, and it attracts demons, by the way, when you use charm. So it is so deceptive. And he's saying that preachers do it a lot. They smile a lot. They drip with practice sincerity. They've gotten better at ripping people off. He says chances are they're out to rip you off some way or another. And you see it all the time in crypto and NFT, these people who put pressure, and they know that you'll just do it because you feel like you have to fit in. Because there's always, you know how to know if someone's charming you? Because you don't feel easy about saying no. You know that if you say no to them, it won't be taken well. They'll either yell at you in their TikToks, they'll yell at you in their videos, or they'll yell at you on the phone or even in chat, or they'll get disagreeable. that's how you know that's the gift of fear, is that if you think about it, if you're scared of saying no to them in any single way, that means they're dangerous. That means they're a wolf looking to rip your throat out. So you can see that actually with the phone banks when they do scam baiting, like when you look at Scammer Payback or some of these other channels. These are the most charming people. Ma'am, 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 ma'am. Oh, yes, ma'am. Oh, yes, I want to sing to you. Oh, yes, I write you poem. Oh, yes, I do this. I do this. Oh, I make these. And then the moment you say, like, I don't know what I'm doing. Oh, I got something wrong. They're like, the ugliness that comes out. It's like the mask gets ripped off and it's so, so ugly, which is not to say that it's just, India and the Philippines who are doing these things, in Indonesia that are making money off of these phone banks. That's where they're putting the call centers. Almost every country in the world is buying into the idea that India is a easy place to get workers and cheap place to get workers. And no, it's actually not. Like, there's a bunch of cultural practices that make it a very, very bad idea. Like, if you're not inside India, it's not a good idea. That's why they do these things. India actually has something they don't tell you about up front, which is they'll do this thing where when you fire them, they require 3 months of pay and like a whole bunch of hula hoop jumps that basically are meant to deter you from ever firing them. Not only that, but if you hire like a developer, say you hire a software developer and you think they're so good that you're like, okay, I'm going to import them I'm going to go ahead and hire them and get them a visa, say for like the UK or for France or something, or say that you need someone over in Australia or you need someone in Japan. And you're like, oh, this programmer is really good. It turns out that in reality, that engineering sector is using India, hires like 12 people to back up one engineer just so that they can make it look like this person is doing this work and this competent, when in reality they had 12 people checking their work, because they have the caste system there. So they're actually hiring a bunch of people for so little. And it's only enforcing the caste system when you hire over there. Always try to source from your own nation for a whole host of reasons, not to mention that you'll be blessed with the natural law. The Lord separates nations for a reason. Anyway, you should be looking for the New Jerusalem anyway. You should be looking for the new earth. Your focus shouldn't even be on who to hire right now. It should be on getting your butt out, because did you see the big flare that just came on the first day of the new month? All those explosions were leading up. All these big explosions for 2 weeks led up, and then boom, it wasn't a mosque that fell. That's not what exploded. Nope. Instead, the sun ripped off a massive flare, ended up halo, and it's hitting today. That's why I've been so sick today and why I'm really struggling, unlike yesterday. And it was just one big spike. It was one big spike. Usually there's a bunch of little flares around it. No, just on February 17th, the first day of the 12th month, an enormous spike. That's such a sign that, just like I thought, by the end of the month, by the time the end of the year comes, it's not going to be good. And what did they say? It's the largest flare of cycle 25 of the solar cycle we're on now. Well, I hate to tell you this, but there's already been some pretty major blasts that people are studying that are bigger than the other blasts that they've seen. So if this one beat that one out, it was numerous times larger than the sun itself. If you can find some photos of this X2.2, anyway, that's a whole separate subject, but anyway. All right, so beware of false preachers who smile a lot, dripping with practiced sincerity. Chances are they're out to rip you off in some way or another. Don't be impressed with charisma, which is charm. Don't be impressed with charm or charisma. Look for character. And that's the thing, is with politics today, even politics today, that's why they don't show you how they vote. They want you to look at their charming voices, the sweet, syrupy things that they say. They all dress the same way, the same times, the same manicured hair, the same manicured nails, for a reason, charming you. But they don't tell you their character. They don't show you how they vote. So you never find out if they do what they say they're going to do. And when they don't show you that means there's something they're hiding. So, who preachers are is the main thing, not what they say. A genuine leader will never exploit your emotions or your pocketbook. These diseased trees with their bad apples are going to be chopped down and burned. Yeah, he's right about that. That happened shortly after that, and then it's going to happen again. Only this time the whole earth is going to burn. It's not just going to be the trees. Verse 21. Knowing the correct password, saying master, master, for instance, isn't going to get you anywhere with me. By the way, that's what Rabbi Zakkai ended up adopting when people started calling him master. That's what rabbi means in Hebrew. It means master. Did you know that? And as the Gospels go on, you start to hear that over time, the crowds start calling Jesus masters. At first, they're calling him King of the Jews, but then they started to call him master. And wouldn't you know it, Rabbi Zakkai adopts that. Before that, according to the Roman records and the Sanhedrin records, it says that who we call rabbis today, they were called priests. Like the priest of the synagogue here, or the priest of the synagogue there, or the high priest, the priest. That was the term, another sign that Rome is actually Jewish. By the way, they just did DNA studies, major DNA studies came out, and yep, they said Jews can play Italians, Italians can play Jews, because they are the same, genetically speaking. Told you guys, told you. Anyway, here it goes, quote, knowing the correct password, saying master, master, for instance, isn't going to get you anywhere with me. What is required is serious obedience, doing what my Father wills. I can see it now at the final judgment. Thousands strutting up to me and saying, Master, we preached the message. We bashed the demons. Our super spiritual projects had everyone talking. And you know what I'm going to say? You missed the boat. All you did was use me to make yourselves important. Don't impress me one bit. You're out of here. And that explains why I don't like TikToks where you get on there and just say you love Jesus. What the heck are you doing? Who are you doing that for? You're not impressing Jesus. Anyway, I think I just talked about a lot of this. You can just reread that on your own, pretty self-explanatory. Verse 24, quote, these words I speak to you are not incidental additions to your life, homeowner improvements to your standard of living. These are foundational words to build a life on. If you work these words into your life, he's speaking about the whole Sermon of the Mount. If you work these words into your life, you are like a smart carpenter who built his house on solid rock. Rain poured down, the river flooded, or tornado hit, but nothing moved that house. It was fixed to the rock. It's absolutely right. People get hate for that. They walk with the Father. They don't talk about what they have. I've seen it in Hollywood. I know certain producers who I didn't even know until years in that they actually follow Jesus and love Jesus, but they never said so because that would be going against the Jewish faith and it would get them kicked out of Hollywood. And so they just kept on, which is exactly what Jesus says to do. But the fact that they're so generous and that they lit up like a light bulb, and the fact that they just seem to be unscathed, unlike everybody else whose kids were dying or whose friends were getting cancers or whose wife was doing this horrible, all these awful things were hitting them, and things bad may have hit them, but it just didn't affect them. They still were just so happy and still fulfilled and okay. They could see that nothing was shaking their house. And boy, that can just draw a lot of bitterness into people. Like, that can really make people angry with you. And just understand that they've made their choices. They've made their choices until they ask you what's different. But some don't ask you what's different because they want to be generous. Some want to ask you that to try and test you and find a way to kick you out. And that's when you ask the Father what to say and how to answer. That's the point. So, quote verse 26. But if you just use my words in Bible studies and don't work them into your life, you are like a stupid carpenter who built his house on sandy beach. When a storm rolled in and the waves came up, it collapsed like a house of cards. Am I right? How many people do you know that go to Bible studies? They're so into their Bible studies. They have something with the church. The church is their life, or the temple is their life, or Buddhism is their life, or Hinduism is their life, right? All these different things, or Judaism is their life. And they work it into that, and they're always at this, and they're always at that. There's nothing. Then they're like, oh, why did things go wrong? Oh, God must hate me. And it's like, well, you don't actually know the Lord. You're more interested in doing things your own way so that you can get a good report card. in the human standard so that your priest can see it, so that your mom can see it, so that your boyfriend can see it, so that you look good in a world standard. But following the Father is so risky. It's totally different, and it requires such abandon and so much trust. And it's very humbling. And until you do it, it's so much easier. It's a hard choice to actually follow him or to go on the side and listen for him and ask him and actually talk to him. But when you do, your house is strong. And if you don't, then you're just as susceptible as everybody else. You're just as susceptible. If all over the world, there are people who are, bowing down, standing up, do this, do that. They give 10%. They give this. They do this. They go do charities. There's every religion in the world does that, right? So it doesn't make you any different. Verse 28, quote, when Jesus concluded his address, the crowd burst into applause. They had never heard teaching like this. It was apparent that he was living everything he was saying. Quite a contrast to their religion teachers. This was the best teaching they had ever heard. And that's the Sermon on the Mount. That's the Sermon on the Mount. If you don't know your pastor, your religious person, if you don't actually know them, there are some small communities I've seen where they just really want to protect their children and they almost live like an Amish lifestyle. But I've seen them, if their kids so much as smile or have fun or have a good time, they're like, oh, no, because they think having a good time is dangerous. And I'm like, no, that's actually what separates the sinners from the saints, is that people who follow Satan, they don't have music, they don't have joy, they don't, no. They're not dancing. There's no laughter in hell. There's cackling, cruelness. There's cruel, but joy and laughter and life, that's a fruit. That's a fruit of a healthy tree, and that's to be enjoyed. I try to think of it this way. Do you know I know that it's a really old film now. There's a series of films that came out in, I think it was the 1970s. I did it for Insider Movies. But say Star Wars, the one that launched it all. Actually, no, The Return of the Jedi, was it? The third one that came out in the 80s, the early 80s. But it ends with, it was kind of the Jim Henson era, where there are all these movies that ended with dancing and drums and playing music together in a little tavern or a ball. Heck, I think Lord of the Rings even ended that way. They ended and they went to a tavern, they danced, they sang, they beat drums. If you look up J.R.R. Tolkien, if you look up his son's, he did a party for his son turning 21, and he was having a big party, and at the end he had some hilarious jokes that was something like, we'll have a car for you at midnight, we'll have barrels for you at 3 a.m., and then we'll have ambulances for you at 9 a.m. or something like that. It was something hysterical. And it's Jesus turned the water into wine. Do you know any religions that are that treat wine in a healthy way? In a way, the Lord says that the wine is a gift for certain celebrations. And there's even a festival of wine, I believe, of the 7 festivals that the Lord gives. One of them is wine. And Satan today has made a society, the deceiver has told us there's only 2 ways to do wine. One is to go all the way and just be an absolute drunkard with it and have wine every single night and have the kind of wine that has 3 servings for 1 glass, or to have nothing, and part of the reason people also have nothing is medicine. I can't have anything because of my medicine. It's worth it to me to be able to talk every day that. It's worth it to me. But the thing is that there's no in between. And if there is in between both sides, it makes you an outcast, doesn't it? But it doesn't matter when you're walking with the Father. You don't even notice. You never feel alone when you have the Father. You never feel alone. So anyway, Jesus said this interesting thing. He said that my words won't die away. Heaven and earth will fade, but my words won't die away. I want you to really think about what a crazy thing that is. I think I've said this before, but I really want to say it again. He did this Sermon on the Mount. It obviously was this long talk. It's one of the first things that he did. He did it on just a guy sitting on a mountainside talking, and his words lasted. These people, they learned to read and write just to record his words, and they lasted. It's the most well-known speech, 2,000 years. It survived the Dark Ages. They found 10,000 manuscripts buried of these words over and over again. And I don't know of anyone who goes around saying my words are going to last, except for maybe Scientology's guy that says that, and he just kept vomiting from his mouth. You can tell that he had a major demon inside him. You can kind of tell when people are demon possessed for a long time. If you look at their lips and the way that they curl around, it looks a little bit like the certain animatronics in whatchamacallit, what was it? The Labyrinth, these kind of cartoons, when their lips do this wide open thing and you look inside their mouth and it's just black, it's just shadow. That's a good sign of someone who's possessed by a real big demon. So for a long time. But it's such an amazing thing that he actually says these words won't die. And they didn't. They still stay with us and they ring true. And when you hear them, you know that it's best. Everyone knows, everywhere in the world, whatever culture they have, they know that it's humbling and self-sacrificial to go ahead and turn the other cheek. But everyone wants a God like that. Everyone wants a God like that. No one really wants a warlord for a God, because that means he'll go to war with you. Everyone wants a God who is patient with them, because that means if he turns the other cheek when we beat him, then that means he'll be forgiving and patient with us. So live generously and do what really the Sermon on the Mount is such a key. Get to know it. If you want to read it in the NASB 1995 translation, they allow you to do it in several ways. You just scroll up here. They give you all these translations, and sometimes I do the Living Bible, but mostly I do either the King James Version or I do the NASB. Where are you? The NASB 1995. So those are the translations that I really stick to. But the Message is the best because they really translate the whole thing. Anyway, I hope that you guys have enjoyed this. I hope that it's answered some of your questions about it with all the cultural changes that have happened. And I've tried to explain it in the context of all the other prophets and all the other things that Rome has kicked out. And I hope you enjoy also the bookshelf that I've arranged. But this is all you really need. This is all you really need. And I hope that it helps you. And I hope that you start watching and seeing how people live and see what they really have and start looking for the natural law, just to see how the Lord actually works and talk to him. Most important thing is to talk to him and to then ask him how to get to the new earth. So anyway, I love you guys so much. I believe the new movie is out tonight on I believe it's Sunday night, right? The 19th. It's the third day of the 12th month. So I believe that's being released online today. So just because of the times, it's being released online. And I'm so glad you guys are enjoying that. And I'm so glad you've enjoyed this. I've made this into a playlist, so you can go onto my YouTube channel and just click this playlist and listen to everything I've done for the Sermon on the Mount, which is one read through and then a commentary for all 3 chapters. So I love you, and I'll talk to you soon, and be well. I'm like, may the Lord be with you. I hate that because that's from Catholicism. So I'm like, may the force be with you. The force is just the Holy Spirit, right? That's all it is. The force is the Holy Spirit. And then what happens is that the force, the occult is just Satan trying to twist the life. It's trying to twist life into being working for it. And you have to kill a lot. You have to do anyway, that's the occult. That's a separate thing. So anyway, just enjoy. I love you guys so much, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.